key part of this is obviously understanding location. Because when you understand location and when you understand maps, you're able to use that information to improve the customer experience across the entire hyperlocal chain. You can improve customer experience from the way the customers are able to provide their address and the way they're able to provide information to the app. You can improve the experience in the way the driver is able to find the address. You can also help improve it in the way the restaurants are able to plan where they should be located and where are the demand centers that they should cater to. So when you think about geospatial information, this actually is a key part of the data set that we use to be able to plan and execute on the hyperlocal product that we have. And so we've been working a bit on that at Swiggy. And as you know, we're processing billions of events every single day as we track our drivers through their daily orders and using that information to then improve the customer experience for Swiggy. So today we thought we'll spend some time talking about what we are doing with geospatial data at Swiggy. And we have Pradnya, who is a distinguished engineer on the team here at Swiggy and Vice President of Tech, who will cover that. And then we also have an external speaker, somebody we're very excited to have, Ujjwal Gandhi, who is the CEO of Spatial Thoughts, also an ex-Googler, who's worked extensively in the domain, and he's also going to share some of his experience and his background in the geospatial domain. And so we'll have that, 2 sessions for the first part of the webinar, and then we'll take questions at the end. We have some time reserved if we finish on time to take questions. So please keep your questions coming. We won't take questions through these sessions, but we will take questions at the end, and I'll try and take as many questions as we can. So with that context, I'll hand it over to Pradnya, who will introduce herself, and we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Dale. Thanks for that introduction. So like Dale said, I just joined Swiggy 3 months ago as a VP and distribution engineer, and I'm super excited to be working on this location intelligence charter. It's very core to Swiggy's success. We are a hyperlocal company, and we are very tied to the geography of any city. So very excited to be working on this. Before this, I was CTO and co-founder of an augmented reality technology company. And before that, I worked at Google for 9 years on various projects on infrastructure side, on AdWords, on Google search as well. So a lot of fun there. And before that, I did my PhD from Georgia Tech. I was in US for a total of 9 years before I moved to India. So I've seen the evolution of Google Maps. When I came to the Google Bangalore office is when they launched Google Map Maker, and Ujjwal will cover some of that history in a bit. So in this session, we will basically do tech deep dives on some of the problems in the geospatial domain, right? So I'm sure many of you, if you're using Swiggy, address accuracy is a big problem for us. I know I have faced this problem where a Swiggy driver comes to a nearby street and then calls me on the phone that I'm on this street, how do I come to your place? And then I give directions. I give them once, twice, but if I give it a 5th time, it's not a great consumer experience for me. So this is one of the things that we are looking at as part of this. Now, when it comes to mapping, we can of course use some external mapping providers. Many of them are good. As consumers, we always use Google Maps, for example. But what we want to do here is, from a business point of view, can we build some of this location intelligence in-house based on the driver data? And that's what we'll talk in a bit over here. So as a deep dive, we thought we'll focus only on the data aspect in this session. So in particular, you can get data either from the GPS traces from the drivers or from the satellite imagery that that is available, right? We have broken it up as I will talk about the data-based intelligence and the database analysis that we can do, and Ujjwal will talk about the satellite-based analysis that we do. So before we start the tech deep dive, I would like to invite Ujjwal actually to give a brief history of how the geospatial domain has evolved. has evolved over time, right? He's an expert in geo. He's been working in this domain for about 15, 20 years now. So I would like to invite Ujjwal at this point. Thanks.
Thanks, Pradnya. Thanks, Dale and Pradnya, for inviting me here. Really excited to be here talking about geo with fellow geeks. So since we're talking about location intelligence today, I thought I'll start off by setting the context and telling you about a bit of a history of how we arrived at this juncture. So what we call location intelligence tech has really evolved from two disciplines of geographic information systems, GIS, and remote sensing. Historically, this has been a field dominated by government users and government data. It has been used for things like land records management, managing transportation networks, utility networks, census mapping, and urban planning, and so forth. The way the data was collected was typically in the field, painstakingly collated, and maybe published once every few years. Government was the primary generator of data and also was the primary user. And it was kind of a niche professional field where everybody who worked was trained in this field and were using kind of desktop-based niche tools. People who work in the industry kind of distinctly remember when all of this started to change. Around 2005, when Web 2.0 was changing the web, Google came out with Google Maps. There were other mapping solutions before, but what Google innovated was the Slippy tile map, which was kind of very easy and intuitive to use. You could just spam and pan and new tiles would load. What they did was it gave access to this vast spatial data to consumers, but most importantly to developers. People started taking all sorts of data and putting in top of Google Maps and creating what they called mashups at the time. Google Maps API was the most popular API on the web. So what this started was a transition of this tech towards the web. In parallel, all the database providers started adding support for spatial data. And database like Postgres have a full-fledged spatial data analytics offering now in terms of Postgres. So with this transition happening, the next big step in the evolution was mobile. When smartphones with GPS became mainstream, people had access to real-time locations on their phones. So that enabled applications like navigation and local search, but also location-enabled services like fitness tracking, and you could play location games like Pokemon Go. Right? So, but more importantly, what this enabled was that consumers or users became part of the data collection journey. People were collecting GPS traces on their phones, taking geotag photos. So the creation of data became decentralized. And people started participating in kind of community mapping and things like that. So where we are today is that companies, we have massive amounts of location data being generated and created every day. Companies like Uber and Swiggy have access to billions of location pings from their drivers and delivery partners. And what this has enabled is this huge stream of data that is coming in, which has enabled a new range of applications. In parallel, there are other technologies like connected cars. They are on the streets, collecting data, collecting images, sending it back. There is also a massive proliferation of satellite data, where satellites are capturing Earth in high resolution at frequency that was just unimaginable a few years back. So what this has enabled is kind of a new set of applications where you can derive intelligence out of this data and really create new kind of applications. And everybody in the industry kind of recognizes that. If you look at any big tech companies, Facebook, Microsoft, Uber, Tesla, everybody, Amazon, everybody has location teams. They are building their own mapping solutions and mapping platforms and have large geospatial teams working for them. So this shift from like authoritative data that was done by government within these few years to kind of live stream of data, huge volumes, but maybe noisy data. That has resulted in kind of new challenges, and the tools and the tool chains that people use traditionally is not able to deal with this effectively. So there are challenges around kind of taking this data, processing it, and making sense of it effectively. But there are also important challenges like data privacy, which needs to be addressed. But I'm really excited at the direction that the industry is taking and looking forward to how as an industry we would solve these problems. So I hope that gives you a good flavor of the history and evolution of this industry.
Thanks, Ujjwal. That was awesome. That was a great background and introduction to the evolution of this geospatial domain. So now let's go into the technical and the depth for the session. If you can go to the next slide. Yeah, okay, this is perfect. So when you talk about location data, right, like Ujjwal said, it's a very noisy set of data. Now, the data itself, we can break this up logically into 3 chunks that we'll talk about in this talk. So one is the data collection. What is this data that we are collecting? How often do we collect? How do we collect this data? What are the constraints? And because of the constraints, what is the sort of accuracy? What is the noisiness in the data? How do we clean up this data, right? Just getting the data is not enough. We need to clean it up in a meaningful way such that we can extract that intelligence out of this whole data set, right? We need to eliminate outliers. So for example, we have seen cases where we see a sudden GPS ping that's half a kilometer away. Now these kind of data is absolutely of no use to us. So we need to eliminate this such that we sort of tune the data set to be more meaningful from a business intelligence perspective. And even in terms of collecting the original data set, as in how can we improve some of the accuracy of those signals. And then once we have this cleaned up data set, how do we process it at scale and use it for our purposes, right? Meaning one of the things that I will cover in the second part of the session is what is so special about spatial data, right? As in we process tons of text data quite routinely. Google search does that. So what is so exciting and different about geospatial data? And that's something that I will cover in the last section. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, thank you. So when it comes to collecting data, the most obvious thing that comes to our mind is the GPS data. Now this is basically the global positioning system, which is based on the satellite signals received from the GNSS satellites. Now you need a minimum of 4 signals to pinpoint your location accurately, and sometimes even up to 20 signals from 20 different satellites, such that you can triangulate the position correctly. Now, if you don't have the GPS data, you could also fall back to Wi-Fi triangulation, which is based on cell phone towers as well as Wi-Fi access points. And another one you could use is Bluetooth or NFC based beacons. So these are more short range, but much more accurate, and these can work even inside buildings. So we know, for example, GPS doesn't work great inside of buildings. Right, so these are some of the data sets that we can collect. We and other companies are also collecting, right? Now, what are the challenges that come when collecting this data in the real world? So I've listed some of the challenges, and we'll do a deep dive on 1 or 2 of those. In particular, the first constraint that always comes to anyone's mind is the device battery, right? We all know that when we turn on GPS, our battery drains much faster. Now, if we have delivery partners who are keeping their GPS on all the while, say they are doing whatever, say 8-hour shifts or something. Now, if that phone is on with the GPS device for that long a while, the battery is going to drain. So then how do we optimize the frequency of GPS data collection for that? Now, based on the chip on the device, there could be incompatibility with the GNSS systems. There could be incompatible frequencies. So we might not get data, let alone good data. We might just not get data, right? So this is one of the challenge. Accuracy of GPS signals, I'll deep dive that in a bit. Sparse and missing data, right? Meaning because of the sampling frequency, if I collect data, say once a minute, then I might miss a lot of in-between interesting spots of GPS pings. And hence I need to do some interpolation between 2 or 3 successive pings in order to get meaningful data. And then we also have the scale issue, right? We are collecting so much data from so many delivery partners. How do we handle that data at scale? How do we clean up that data at scale? Can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So talking about GPS accuracy, we have all seen that dreaded blue circle when we open the Maps app, right? And we are waiting for that location accuracy to be fine-tuned. Now, what are the reasons that this accuracy can be low? In this blue circle basically says that the device that you are holding in your hand is not able to estimate the correct position. There's a huge variance in that. And that could be due to multiple reasons. The antenna on the device itself could be weak. The signal strength from the satellites itself could be weak. And this is especially so when the satellite is at the horizon rather than overhead. So that variance in the satellite's signal strength can be really huge. There could be clock drift errors between the device and the satellite systems, due to which the device cannot accurately compute the location, right? But one of the really exciting reasons for inaccuracy is the multipath effect, and that's basically due to reflections from the surrounding terrain. And I'd like to deep dive into this in the next couple of slides, so that we understand what is this problem and what are the solutions that can be employed to fix this problem, right? Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. So this is basically a work that Uber has done, and I'm just presenting it here because I found this problem as well as the solution very exciting. So if you look at the image on the left, there are 3 satellites overhead, and there are a couple of buildings there, right? Tall buildings. So this is known as the urban canyon problem, which is very prevalent in cities which have tall buildings like so Singapore, New York, Bombay, Bangalore, right? Where there's no clear line of sight to the satellites. Now, what do I mean by line of sight? If you look at the first image, the one on the left says that satellite number 2 and 3 is directly in line of sight, whereas satellite number 1 is not, meaning there's a building that's obstructing it. So based on this, we can estimate that the person holding this device is standing on the left side of the road. Now, if you look at the first image, but the second part, you see that the satellite number 1 and 2 have direct line of sight, whereas 3 does not because of the building obstruction. So you estimate it to be on the right side of the road. Now, this is all well and good. But then what happens if there is reflection from the nearby buildings? So if you look at image 2, what we see that although the satellite is not directly in line of sight, there is a reflection that comes from the other building, and hence we might estimate that that satellite is actually in line of sight, and hence our GPS positioning might be completely thrown off. We have seen this often, right? I'm standing on this side of the road and we suddenly see that, oh, the GPS shows that you're across the road. So these are some of the accuracies, and we'll go to the next slide to see how they have solved this problem. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. So this is a combination of sort of inputs based on this, based on which Uber is solving this problem. The first is basically using the signal to noise ratio for each of the GNSS satellites. Now say I have 10 satellites in my view, right? The device has is receiving signals from 10 satellites. Now based on this signal to noise ratio, we can approximately determine which satellites have direct line of sight versus which are getting the signal from a reflected building. Okay, so that is our first input to solving this problem. Now we use this, plus we use a ray tracing to determine the line of sight using 3D maps. So what they've done is, say for New York, you construct a 3D map of the buildings, and you do a ray tracing in 3D from the device to the satellite, and you guess whether this ray trace, you won't guess the ray trace. Ray trace will tell you whether the building is intersecting or not. And based on that, you can determine that, okay, this should be in line of sight, whereas this satellite should not be in line of sight. Now, the combination of these two will give you what they call as the probabilistic shadow matching technique. So based on this combination, they come up with a heat map or a likelihood surface on that area, which says that this is the likely or the probability of the device being at this particular point is higher than at some other point. So they develop a heat map in, say, to a 10 by 10 meter area or a 50 by 50 meter area, right? Now this heat map itself can be very complicated. It can be disjointed. It can say that some of the signals are here, some of the possible positions are here. So they overlay this with the past locations. Now this is where the history of the GPS pings comes into play, right? Now when a Uber driver or a delivery partner is moving, there's a sequence of pings that we are getting, right? Now, based on this history, we can tell that this particular person was moving in this direction. And then you intersect that with the heat map to determine the actual possible locations of the driver, right? So this is one of the ways that we can use, that Uber has used, and we are actually exploring this as well. This is one of the ways to figure out what is the likely GPS location, and to, in some sense, improve the accuracy of the GPS signal on the device. Can we go to the next slide, please? So we talked about one set, right? Now, based on our data, we have seen that the GPS signal accuracy that we receive is usually greater than 50 meters, right? The 90th percentile is greater than 50 meters, for example. So what are other ways to improve this accuracy? Meaning the urban canyon problem need not exist everywhere, right? It's prevalent in cities, but many other open locations, this might not be the case. So there are some other ways we can use to improve the accuracy. One of these is position sensors, or what are called as IoT sensors. Basically, this is the geomagnetic field sensor or the accelerometer, which also estimates the position. And in combination with the GPS data, we can determine or more fine-tune the GPS location in some sense, right? The other way to do this, or the other way to clean up the data, would be to eliminate outliers based on speed. Meaning we see that the driver has been moving at, say, 30 kmph on this particular road, and then suddenly we see a GPS ping that is much further ahead, which would have required the driver to drive at, say, 100 kmph, right? So this is not possible given the history of the GPS pings. So we eliminate outliers based on this. Other thing we can do is to interpolate the missing data, right? When I talked about the battery constraints, I mentioned that there is some certain frequency at which we are collecting this data. Now, if we miss some interesting points in between, how do we look at the history to figure out what could the missing points have been, right? So there's some interpolation techniques that we use for this. And one interesting experiment that actually Swiggy has done is to use beacons in restaurants where we want a much more accurate range. Now, if GPS signals give, say, 10 to 20 or 50 meter accuracy, that might not be good enough for us. So one of the use cases here is where we want to be able to accurately tell whether a driver has arrived at a restaurant, right? Because if they say that they have arrived, but restaurant claims they have not, then how do we disambiguate this, right? It's important for us from a timing estimation perspective that we know accurately when the driver has come there. And here, as 50 meter accuracy is not going to be enough for us, because 50 meters means that person can be across the road. It will take 5 minutes for the driver to arrive at the restaurant. So we experimented with putting BLE based beacons in the restaurants, which have an accuracy of up to 5 meters. So only when the driver steps within 5 meters of that beacon can we say that, yes, that person has actually arrived at the restaurant, and we are experimenting with that. Okay, so this is an overview of some of the challenges we have in collecting this data and cleaning up this data, improving the accuracy of the data. Now I would like to hand over to Ujjwal, where he will talk about satellite imagery analysis and how that can be used. And then at the end, I'll come for a second half where we will talk about how this data collection from GPS and how Ujjwal's satellite imagery analysis can be tied together to solve business problems with the right use of technology.